Welcome to our first webinar of 2025, our Dalim Tips and Tricks series. We typically do these, we used to do them a little bit more often, but we are pretty busy these days. But for 2025, our goal is to try to do one every other month. So we should cover 6 of them. We're going to kick this one off. For those of you who are new to our series, I try to do kind of a recap of one of Dalim's, actually Dalim's biggest event, the Worldwide Technology Meeting that they host the first week of December every year. It's a fantastic event. It's pretty much 5 days of a lot of information that I'm going to try to put into a short webinar and just kind of sum up some of what they went over, let y'all know what Dalim's up to and where they're headed. So the first thing I'm going to cover is going to be some product updates from a Twist, Dalim ES6, the React AM interface, as well as what's coming with Service Pack 4. So for Twist specifically, there are over 20 specific improvements that are done to the product. Obviously, Dalim's always working on, especially things like their normalization engine, things like that for converting files as customers report any issues with PDF files changing or InDesign versions changing and creating new problems. They're always, creating those fixes and putting those out on builds as the year goes. But over the past couple of years, really, Dalim's been working to get their ISO 27001 certification, which is an information security management system standard. And because of that, they put a lot of thought, a lot of effort into locking down, securing all of the products. So you're going to see a lot of the discussion early on. It's going to be kind of about that. One, they've improved inside of Twist the ability to use secure Tomcats, SSL 8443 between Apache's Tomcat, the Twist ES cluster, between the Gate and WebLink, and with ES Connect. So pretty simple to do, but definitely contact us if it's something that you're in need of doing. We've gone through that with a few customers recently, and so we're pretty well versed in it and can help you with that. Print Dispatch is now compliant with SSH SCP over OpenSSH 9. They've had to do some work because obviously as the OSs have progressed, since Rocky Linux 8 and Red Hat EL9, their standards that they've built in from a security standpoint. So some of what Dalim has relied on in the past, like the SHA-1 RSA key, is now disabled in the latest versions, and they have to address that with tools like Print Dispatch. So you can see, as time goes by, OSs are changing. Dalim's having to respond to a lot of the security stuff. Transmit now supports public key authentication with SCP. So a lot of good stuff in here. It's been very helpful for us as we've gone through the audits with a lot of our larger customers. It's nice to know that we can actually rely on the work that Christoph and his team have done to lock down the products and know that we can kind of patch and meet most of the security things that customers are looking to fix. The latest version of Rocky Linux 9 changed X Windows Server, so CT Retouch had to be updated to be compliant with that. So those of you out there that are still using CT Retouch, Litho CT Retouch, which is an amazingly powerful tool for those that aren't using it and have that license with their Twist, you should take a look at it sometime for editing PDFs and stuff like that. Fantastic application. A little bit dated interface, but fantastically powerful. So they built updated compliance with ArcMap 10 PDF files. So it's kind of geographical information inside PDF files for those mapping customers. They've done a lot of work over the last really couple of years with PDF size optimization. They worked with us with one of our customers that had, this is the second bullet point here about having settled and posed single PDFs. So it's PDF files that are thousands of pages and have several of the same images or same files placed throughout, so imposed PDFs. several of them placed throughout, and they've done optimizations that have taken files that are up to a gig in size down to 50 megabytes, and amazing improvements with the speed of processing those, as well as the compression and optimization of their size. Same thing with files with excessive metadata and images that can cause ballooning of file sizes. They now support XML with accents and attributes, that separate from XML tool as well. So Dalim ES6, again, more security improvements, OAuth 2 authentication for SMTP. So you see some new settings in the SMTP setup in the system settings. So you can secure that. Improved logging, which some of this is nice to see. So they're now logging approved that are bypassed or steps that are bypassed, so you know those took place in your logs before. You didn't necessarily know, you didn't see it in the logs when you were looking at things. Note deletions are now logged in Elasticsearch, as well as the notes themselves are being indexed in Elasticsearch. So you now can go into your search and search on something you know you put a note on a file, a specific word you put in a note or a specific phrase in a note, and find that in your search results. And they've also done a lot of optimization on the Elasticsearch logging itself throughout the application. For LDAP, they've done some synchronization to kind of sync up the fields that you see in the LDAP configuration in ES versus an LDAP server. So it's like the group name attribute, the LDAP import, and then there's logging. So you have a status and messaging, whether there was failures on the import, is it syncing currently? That kind of stuff is going to be logged down. You see at the bottom there. In ES6, they've kind of still looking at improving things, even though Fusion is out there, getting ready to be available to everyone. They know it's going to take time to get all of the features built into Fusion, and it's going to take people a long time to actually migrate as they get their features that they need. They're still working on the ES interface, so built some, what they call user-friendly functions. So now you don't have to be an admin user to rename folders in the interface as long as you're given that permission. You used to have to be an admin level user to do that. Many of you who use a lot of user actions know that in the past, if you would select a couple hundred files, for instance, to do whatever function, to a manual archive or a deletion or anything, it would take a long time for it even to give you feedback on launching that user action. That speed's been greatly improved. It makes it much more usable with large numbers of files. They've improved the search algorithm, so you now can do complex queries with mixed logic. So you can do ors, ands, and nots. For instance, the example that's shown below, they search for an animal and its llama, but not a PDF. So it only shows the images that come back as a llama. So nice to have those advanced search functions when you're looking for stuff. There's also been improvements in the re-indexing of the object index. I'm curious to give that one a try. I have not yet. But we have customers that basically, if something has happened to their search index, their object index, it could take over a day or a couple of days sometimes to re-index, as they have millions of files on their ES server. So I'd be curious to take a sample of something like that and do a re-index and see how it works out. They've also added EPUB compliance for residual pub pre-flight. So kind of a standard out there for e-publications. They've improved the dynamic imposition engine by adding an advanced mark. The advanced marks computing rules have been improved, just fixing some of that. I don't think we have just a couple of customers on our webinars that typically that use the dynamic imposition, but again, very powerful. And I don't think I mentioned it in these slides, or we really didn't talk about it in this show, but we'll probably do a webinar soon on the imposition as a service that has been discussed with a couple of duos, very powerful, basically doing imposition by code. really something interesting to see and definitely worth a webinar to take a look at it. Have to get Tom to see if I can get him to do one. They've done additions to the support for different cloud storage. So Nasuni has been added as a cloud storage solution. AWS S3 static object storage. So basically, not AWS S3 for itself, but you're now able to use API of S3 to create your own. So that is supported. They've added a function to forget symbolic links for 𝐿𝐶mon. So what we've seen before is if you have a shared file, a file system created in ES that 𝐹𝐿𝐶mon is monitoring, and they had a lot of symbolic links in it, it would almost loop. It would take it much longer. So you're now able to ignore those and have 𝐹𝐿𝐶mon work a lot more efficiently. And also they've added, I think this was for a European customer, they've added support for folder depths over 1,000 characters. So there's some customers going to have very long folder names, have enormous depth to those, subfolders, as well as I think the example that was used at WWTM was, German customers that have very long words as well, and that they ran up into issues where they could only support 999 characters. So now that's been fixed. I'm not sure that affects anybody here. They're still paying attention to React 1.5 and still always looking for input on needed functions. They want to see more and more people using this or migrating to this because it's a much cleaner, quicker interface to use for end users or for DAM users especially. They've done speed improvements throughout the interface, especially when you're using the production filtering. The same or and not operators are included in it as well. That search function carries over from the regular search in ES. So you see an example here again. It's, what was it? It was a fruit and it's a PSD file. So you see the results on the left. On the right, they've now said not banana, so the banana file is going. They did an improvement with accessing collections. So some people were having issues because they were using the @ symbol as a separator between the collection name and the user. So they've actually changed that to a pipe. Looks minimal, but obviously makes a big difference if your usernames tend to have their email addresses in them. They added a icon for copyright status. So you see the icon there on images that have copyright or don't have copyright. If you select, and I didn't grab a screenshot of this, I should have. If you select the copyright symbol, it actually will show you the copyright information as far as dates and everything go. In your favorites area, and this is a welcome change or welcome addition, I should say, you now can add folders and projects to your favorites. So you can use your favorites more as a little launching area where you're always able to get to the folder you go to the most, not just the images or files you go through the most, also maybe a project that you tend to go into a lot. And obviously, since you can add and remove things from your favorites, you can use that for the stuff you're working on currently. You can now save custom kind of resolution presets for the image conversion tool. So you see here, like they have, say, in blog, web, print, so just presets for that. I think, I don't remember if this was something that partially existed before, but now the user can do it. But it's also a new welcome addition, as well as the ability to set on to keep aspect ratios, which you see if you keep aspect ratio, it'll be like 2:1, and that's how you're setting your file. Or if you turn it off, you can actually put in a pixel count, 500 by 300, for instance, to crop the image. So on the Service Pack 4. So we're going to see Service Pack 4 right at the end of the first quarter, possibly beginning of the second quarter. Obviously, there's a lot of testing that goes into this because what the service packs are, I think I've explained it before, but basically it's Dalim's way to update the third-party pieces that have to be installed with the software. So Service Pack never includes anything that affects the actual code, Dalim's code itself. In fact, if you install a service pack, your day-to-day functioning shouldn't change at all. What's changing is those third-party pieces like Postgres, Elasticsearch, Tomcat, Connect, actually, the React DAM itself, since it's a separate piece on top of the code, and the video viewer changes are also built into that. So for Postgres, the version that's going to be released with it is 14.3. The current version, which is a derivative of Postgres 12, is basically, I think, end of life at the end of last year. So there won't be any more patching for that. And basically for security compliance and stuff, our customers are already having to move up. So that Service Pack 4 will take care of that. Similar for Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch 8.1.6 is going to be in there. Currently, product shipped with Elasticsearch 7, or even with Service Pack 3, you're running Elasticsearch 7. It's hard to tell what the end of life is because it's odd. Elasticsearch only lists that as when 9 comes out, 7 will be end of life. And they don't have a date for when 9 comes out. So they plan on having Elasticsearch 8.16, the question marks, because they're not positive on that. They still don't know all the gotchas that might be there. If y'all remember, when Dalim went from Elasticsearch 5 to Elasticsearch 7, there were a lot of changes in the indexing and the way they had to write into Elasticsearch, and they had to actually create a script to do that transformation to update from an Elasticsearch 5 index to Elasticsearch 7. So that's why the question mark, they're not sure that, and that's probably the piece that may be holding them up by not having the Service Pack ready yet. Apache Tomcat doesn't advance too much, but it's going to be 9.097 now. And even with Service Pack 3, we've had recently a security audit that flagged that as not being the latest version. So we have to keep up as much as we can. So again, it's stated the React DAM 1.5.5, which includes some of the features we just talked about. And the video viewer stays as it is with the latest changes. And again, that's going to be out hopefully first quarter, at end of first quarter. So at end of March, possibly beginning of April. Dalim's been working a lot with kind of what they call connectors, ways to extend the use of ES. And some of those that they've worked on this year have been CC Connector, of course, it's their own plugin. They have an integration now with CI Hub, which we'll talk about a little bit, as well as Nasuni, LucidLink, and Blanchard Connect are things I'm going to talk about. A couple of those aren't necessarily Dalim developments, Blanchard developments, but they do extend the use of ES and work with ES. So I'll talk about those. First of all, CC Connector. Those of you that aren't aware, you can get this from the Creative Cloud application, install it into your InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and have a plugin that connects to ES using the same authentication, so same credentials. It basically just takes up a concurrent user because you're logged into ES itself. It uses a CMIS API to present all the files you have access to in ES. So permissions are saved, and you can only see what you're allowed to see. Through the plugin, you can do your searches. So you can search your assets via metadata, file name, whatever it is. You can edit files, save files, and create them and link your files in InDesign. It handles revisions. You can do check-in, checkouts, as well as locking files so other people know you're working on it. There's ability to change between a low def and high def image in InDesign. Because the way InDesign works with all plugins is it connects via the API to the ES server. It actually creates a link that is actually an HTTPS link to it, but in the background, it's actually downloading the file to a temp folder under your user directory, and that's where InDesign is accessing the file. So the ability, if you work with large files, especially if you're linking to the low def version, and no changes you have to do in ES, it's just part of the previews that ES creates. can save you a lot of download time, a lot of file manipulation time, especially as you go through InDesign revisions. And then you're able to export a PDF at the end of the day, export it back up to your ES through the plugin itself. So no need to go into the web interface when you're working in InDesign and going back and forth. You do it all through the plugin. It's installed with all Dalim ES instances. So if you own ES, you have enough users, you're able to use that today. It's compatible with single sign-on, can be used with multiple ESs. So you just say, profile basically, log into an ES. So if you're an end customer and you use a couple of different vendors that have ES, you can save those profiles, log in one, do what you need to do, log out, log into the other, and keep working. And there's something in if you're looking for to get a demo of this, it's something we can arrange, but it's also a couple of webinars, and I probably should include the links. If you need them, just email us and we'll send you the links. I've done a couple of webinars, or my team's done a couple of webinars that one showed the plugin working, and I did one that actually showed integration with an InDesign server. So we actually were able to work in InDesign completely, never create a PDF from InDesign, upload the InDesign page to ES, go through our kind of soft proofing, validation, notes, revision cycles there. And we were ready through the ES workflow. We would launch the InDesign server, create the high-res PDF at the end, and put ready for print. So it's a nice workflow. Sorry if I did that. Let's see, a question. And yeah, to answer the question, yeah, if you logged in with CC connector, it is a concurrent use. So if you logged into CC connector and you're logged into ES through the web, that's two concurrent users. Some updates on it. So now it ignores embedded images like QR codes on the InDesign page. A little better handling of profile rights. So I think before it wasn't necessarily honoring a mask, profile mask, and it does now. Improvements on the search results, some stuff we have already talked about. And it is compatible actually with ES Fusion. So we're going to talk in a little bit about how you access Fusion coming soon. You will be able to use the current version of CC Connector with Fusion if you want to play around with that. On the roadmap, currently there's an issue. Photoshop 2025, when it came out, does not support Rosetta. Because of some of the code in the CC connector, it requires Photoshop to run in Rosetta mode. So 2024 is fine, but it will not run in 2025. That's it. Illustrator and InDesign 2025 are still fine. They do plan on the next version of CC connector is actually going to use Fusion technology. So it'll be a completely different GUI and it won't have that code to worry about that. They are looking at addressing the Photoshop 2025 issue before then now, before Fusion's completely out. So the next plugin that they've worked with is they've done an integration with CI Hub. Now, CI Hub is kind of functionally very similar to CC Connector. This is a German software company. It's a separate development, but it's a plugin that's widely used by a lot of people in the marketplace. The reason being is it supports 15 different applications. So, not only the InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator, but After Effects, InCopy, Google Docs, Google Sheets, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, Figma, Sketch, WordPress. So it's a very robust plugin. It also supports over 60 different integrations. So along with ES, things like AEM, Primo, SendShare, SharePoint, and many, many more. So the reason it's had wide adoption in the marketplace is because of that. If you're an agency and you're using dams, for instance, from multiple different sources. You can use CI Hub and connect to a certain customer's ES server, another customer's SendShare server, and a third customer vendor's AEM, for instance, and not have to have a learning curve that, oh, I'm supposed to use CC connector to get to the ES, and I need to use this other one for AEM, for instance. So that's why it's had such wide adoption from end users. So kind of just a slide illustrating that all the productivity tools we can use, client applications, and all the platforms on the back end. And so you'll see kind of when you're adding connections inside a CI Hub, you need to be able to filter what type of product it is. Dalim being filtered, I should have just clicked on just the damn check box. You add the connector through that. It requires OAuth 2 authentication, so basically single sign-on setup through ES. So you do have to go through that in ES to be able to use the plugin, but because they have to meet such high standards for security. And then on the right, kind of a screenshot of what the connector looks like. To me, it's a bit busier. It definitely has a bit more function than the CC connector, but very powerful. Same search results, works very well. And gives you, same thing. You can access projects and file systems, do your searches on file. It's honoring the rights that the user has for what assets they can see inside of ES. Does the unlocking, locking, searches metadata, handles revisions, and the interesting thing inside of it, they do have what they call an asset classification filter, which you'll see here. If you do a search, it'll say, look, you have one layout, so InDesign file, 2 images, and other, 47, so other kind of files it found. So if I'm looking, I know I'm looking for specifically an image, I can click on the images and limit that down to just do it kind of the filter information. Then it's kind of pros of CI Hub is it's not very expensive. Per user, it's pretty inexpensive. Huge range of client applications, very powerful, and connection to many dams and PIMs. The cons are, compared to CC connector, there is a cost for it. So CC connector, obviously, one of the main pros, it's free, so completely included with ES, except for your user that you're taking up logging into ES. It's seamless installation, and it's a very simple, clutterless UI. Cons, it's limited a little bit in functionality compared to something like CI Hub, and then the Photoshop 2025 support, or lack thereof. So CI Hub Drive, question mark. This was kind of a session that Tim spoke at, and they did the integration with CI Hub. It was specific to a request by a customer that required that to move to ES. But since Dalim started that integration, CI Hub has adopted a product they call Drive. This is something that was started by actually Steph Klein, which many of y'all will remember that name from the past. So he's still around. He now works for CI Hub. He created a fantastic little utility that allows you to mount if it was working completely with ES, and it does work with most of their other DAM solutions. It lets you mount the volumes from that directly on your desktop. So if you remember years ago, Dalim tried their hand at using WebDev to do this kind of function, and it failed because WebDev was just so slow. There was no way to access the files and really be able to work decently with it. But the permissions of what you see in the desktop are exactly what ES gives you the rights to. There's no, other than maybe LDAP integration you're doing with ES itself from a user login standpoint, you don't have to fight Samba configurations or anything like that for what people can access and how they're accessing it. And it actually does a synchronization between the desktop and ES itself, and has caching built into the product. So the files you're working on the most, they're local to you, and they're just syncing to the cloud as you save them and updating them. You're able to actually go into at a desktop level, so or a Finder level, you're able to actually take files, set them for offline use, which basically downloads them from ES, and they're in your cache. So if you go home and you don't have connection to your ES, or you're not logged into your ES, you can still edit those files, modify them, and then reset them to not download it, or forget what they call it, and put it back online. You're also able to use two Finder windows. If you have multiple dams you're connected to copy file from one of them to the other without having to download it to your machine and then upload it to the other one. And all the dynamic searching that you can do inside the CI Hub plugin is included inside CI Hub Drive at the desktop level as well. So it's something we really, Tim kind of took a poll asking who wants to see this, and I think everyone in the room raised their hand. We want Dalim to pursue this integration and follow through with it. I think especially as we know that there's a lot of customers that are needing to get off, or have gotten off, or needing to get off of things like 𝐂𝐻net because the product's not being kept up with anymore, and basically support costs are just going up. Samba can be a bit cumbersome to configure manually to deal with that with ES, but this gives us that solution, as well as some of the other stuff we're going to talk about. But this is something I'd really like to see Dalim pursue. So one of the other integrations they've done is actually with Nasuni. So what Nasuni is, it's been scalable cloud storage being used almost like through a file server to get local access to them. So again, all the rights are kept. You can do on-premise or cloud storage. You have local caching, but you're accessing, basically it's considered, it's an edge appliance that you're actually accessing. So that edge appliance can exist in your cloud, or it can exist locally. If you have a big office that a lot of people need to access files from, that edge appliance can exist there. It's connecting to the management console to get all of its information and cached files so that you can always have fast access to your files. Again, it's real-time sync using FSMon with ES. Permissions are kept up with it. And one of the really powerful things with it, I've had discussions with customers where, obviously there's a cost associated with using something like Nasuni. But if you compare it to kind of block storage versus using S3 behind this, the cost is almost completely offset, and you're getting some additional functions that removes the need for some additional software like backup software or ransomware. So I'm going to show an example of the backup stuff. The ransomware is obviously hard to show, but I actually did a little test on the side in a way. I set up a server and just shared a volume out over SMB and opened it up to the public. And within an hour for sure, probably within minutes, there was ransomware on that box. And because I had it hooked up to a test Nasuni management console, Nasuni detected that and cut off the connection to that box. So all of the files that had been put on that box got quarantined inside the management console, and any files that got corrupted, I was able to go in the management console and recreate them from the last backup of those files, or the last version of files. So it's the last change. It's not even really a backup. It's just from the change. The file changes that previous ones kept. So incredibly powerful for that. Obviously, there's additional cost for the ransomware side, but really nice, and definitely something people should consider, especially the way work goes these days. So just an example of the backup part of it is, so this was shown through the management console on the left is one of my file systems that I shared out to ES, and you'll see kind of the folder I'm inside called Find Me, inside of ES and inside the management console. I did something that I know none of y'all users have ever done, is I went into the file system underneath everything, and I just deleted every file that had IMG in it. So you see that between this slide and this slide, all the IMG files are gone. ES updated, files don't exist, files were removed from my file system. I was able to go into the management console immediately after It shows me times that things had changed. So inside that folder, I could go back to a specific point in time and say, now show me what it looked like at this time. That was the time of the previous changes were made. I was able to select my files because I see them there. You can kind of see it in the grayed out area down here, that my files were there at 348. And I'm able to select that. I want to restore them as we did to the original destination. If there's a file that is going to be overwritten, what I want to do, some preferences like that. And the files came back in. Now this is ES. As far as ES was concerned, those files have been deleted, and now there are new files coming back in. So in this case, I can get my files back. I lose history and stuff like that, which is something that might not happen to us in Fusion coming up. Daliim's looking at things like that. But obviously, if it was a very large directory, very important, you can go back to backups of the database, or hopefully if things are that important, is the database, replicated in a way you could get back really quickly, the last version before change like this was made. Now, it's even we've had customers that mysteriously lost, large directories, and they had to get them back. So they would have to go to the previous night's backup, wait for a restoration from tape or from some kind of archive, and go through that whole process. So in this case, I did this in less than a couple of minutes. So LucidLink, we had a customer who had the need to do LucidLink, to use LucidLink as a file system in ES. Dalim was still working on Nasuni, and there were some demands behind it that weren't necessarily going to be met by typical FS9 type stuff. So at Blanchard, we actually, our development team did some work to create a support for LucidLink inside of ES. And what LucidLink is basically, again, very similar, mountable cloud storage, but actually works from a client application local. So it's a little bit closer to what I was talking about with CI Hub Drive, where you have a mounted volume locally and you're working from that. It's caching and syncing to the cloud. Everything in the cloud's encrypted, completely protected. In our industry, the typical print industry that most of the people on this call are in, or even agency, we don't do that much video work. LucidLink is basically almost a standard with video production companies. They actually work really well with After Effects and things like that, have plugins for it, and you can actually open tremendously large files while they're still streaming from the cloud. So great algorithms for that. And if you look at most videos on YouTube on LucidLink, you'll see it specific to video. But in this case, it's also a fantastic tool for what our users need. And the way we're monitoring is with a product I'm going to talk about in a little bit called Blanchard Connect. So no FS9 as part of this. And because we have our own connector that's looking at the logs of LucidLink and what's being done by what users, we're actually able to use the ES API in the process of registering files to even track file movements and make sure files are actually moved and not, basically from the ES standpoint, deleted and re-ingested in a different area. So Blanchard Connect itself. So this is a product that we've developed over the last year, and it basically makes integrating third-party solutions a lot simpler. It's a bunch of connectors to different products that we're able to connect together to work. So it's all open source, and basically is in what we call it kind of an umbrella term we're using for integration as a service function. So at the heart of it basically is, I'm not even sure how many connectors we're up to, but we build the connection to APIs or whatever it is, way to connect to software. So we have connectors to things like CloudFront, Monday, Dalim ES. So the whole ES is built as one of our connectors. Different dams. So like a Primo, for instance, is a dam. And what we can do is use Connect to map how this piece of software connects to that piece of software and make that simpler. So in the past, where if somebody told us, hey, I have AEM and I need to push my files when they're done in ES over to this AEM DAM for longevity, for archive purposes, or whatever they're using it for. Well, from Dalim's standpoint, we would go in, we create a step script, we write the API into that step script, or some integration like that, as an example. We don't have to do that anymore. We use our Blanchard Connect to just diagram it, connect it to the ES instance, connect it to the AEM instance, and we're off and running. So saving us a lot of integration time, a lot of work on that, and making it replicatable, where things aren't missed, things aren't forgotten. So it's completely visual, open source programming that allows you to connect different hardware devices, APIs, and online services together. Basically, drag and drop, create an application on the fly. So we're very proud of that. And, you're going to hear it more and more as, like, when y'all are coming to us and ask it, hey, I need to work with these people now and they have this. Blanchard Connect is going to be kind of our push on that. Let's use this service and not have to pay for all this professional services time. So it's open source, reliable, scalable, and it fosters learning as you kind of go through all the functions of it. So just a quick example I grabbed. There was something we played with actually when the developers first were playing with it. This is a Workfront project that we were able to quickly go from Workfront, and because we had our connection done, when a project gets created, it gets pushed and creates an ES project with all of the milestones, all the deadlines set to go already. Obviously, we would want to use a project template in that so that the milestones and everything match up properly, but this was done automatically through Blanchard Connect. No having to go in here and set deadlines and have all these relationship things that you're often having to do inside of ES, which was kind of the reason why a lot of people didn't necessarily move forward with using this planning function of ES, because they're already doing it in other software. We now have a way to push that information you built in Monday or Workfront and push it into ES for you, so your deadlines and your notifications can all be set without a ton of work. On the ES Fusion side, so one big thing update they had, and it's going to be interesting to see, is going to be they're actually going to create, using Electron and Capacitor, they're creating basically desktop applications or iPhone apps for Fusion. So as y'all know, like in the past, to keep monitor profiles and things like that, Dalim had to create Latitude, different services like that, and then security gets tighter and tighter. You're able to do less and less through a browser. Because of that, Dalim's creating the desktop app for Fusion. So you're able to use an application that's desktop level, has all the permissions it needs to access your monitor profiles, download files, whatever those functions are. And same thing on the app side, to use all the functions you had on a phone, so it's not through your browser on your phone. Big announcement they had is Dalim is really pretty much ready to go with an early adoption program. So because of the complexities of Fusion, one of the things that it's going to take longest with a product like Fusion is going to be creating the installation process, securing that, making sure it's compatible with all the different versions of OSs or customer setups. Always a very long, drawn-out process. So to get all of our hands on the software as quick as possible, what they decided to do is create an early adoption program. This is where Dalim will be hosting that Fusion instance. There'll be different variants of it. So online review and approval, the simplest, DAM, printing prepress, so you'll actually have flat plan functions and stuff using kind of the legacy ES flat plan inside of Fusion, as well as packaging automation. So just again, to kind of simplify the deployment and get people's hands on it quickly so that product can be troubleshot and tested without worrying about the environmental pieces behind it or the infrastructure behind it. There's going to be 3 different packages. They discussed price somewhat at the Worldwide Technology meeting. I didn't include that here and wanted to leave that open because that is something that's going to be changing, and I didn't necessarily want to put that in this webinar. But there's going to be a tester version. So this is probably the most common that's going to be used. I just want to get my hands on it, start playing with it, kind of like we're doing, get my developers looking at it from an interface standpoint and API standpoint, things like that. So for testing and learning the software, learning what it's going to do, it does include all current features. So you don't have to worry about, let's say, licensing. Oh, I want this feature, not that feature. So anything that's available for Fusion is going to include. And there's no user limits. Let everybody play with it. Let everybody kick the tires on it. It's going to be up basically 14.5, as they stated here. So 5 days a week is the guarantee. It's just a small server and obviously low priority support. Open tickets, there's going to be a certain way to open the ticket, and you're going to be, most of the people on this call will be opening directly with us, and we kind of vent that through just to keep track of it. There's going to be a discovery package. So that's more for discovery and starting to test migrating from ES6 over, really kicking the tires, testing functions, things like that. Again, it's all current functions, unlimited users, 24/5 uptime. And the reason why is because they will be doing updates on these as the Fusion's improving. They want those windows to be able to do that. Just more of a standard service, a little bit more robust to the server, medium priority support, and you get an assigned project success engineer. So somebody to work with to guide you through it. And then there's actually going to be a production version. So if you really have a need to get this out to production, like for instance, just from a DAM perspective, because of the improvements in interface, and you want your customers to start here, they will allow a production version of it, again, still hosted by them. And the pricing on that will be something that's scalable, depending on functions, depending on different things. They're still working on the pricing models for all of this. So it'll actually be auto scaling. So you'll be able to take advantage of the scaling. It can be done dynamically, 24/7 uptime, high availability, priority support, a project success engineer, and custom deployments available, obviously, at a cost. This is not something I'm going to go in depth at. I see I'm already at the 50-minute mark as it is. But I did want to give kudos to Melvin. He did an amazing job explaining the infrastructure that they're putting behind Fusion from an AWS standpoint, what they're going to be hosting these packages on, and really was able to kind of create an amazing picture of everything that's behind and all the technologies that are being used. It was interesting because he used a kind of a fruit factory to explain all the different pieces. And I just wanted to kind of give him kudos and talk just briefly about this, because I thought he did a great job with this presentation. And I always like pointing out, like when the presentations that Tim does and Tom does sometimes, when somebody does a great presentation, I want to give some credit to them. So summarizing everything he talked about, though, is if you look at all the services here and everything, this is everything that's going to be going behind a large Fusion instance that's going to be scalable, using things like Kubernetes, Carpenter, Helm, S3 storage behind the scenes. There's a lot to it, but it just shows you that when Dalim decided that they were going to make the product, AWS native or compliant, they went all out with it, and they went all out with the newest, best technologies for doing this. So where we used to say we were AWS compliant because, I run, ES servers, and we host them for our customers at Blanchard and AWS. It's compliant, but not like this. And Dalim's done a fantastic job with that. So some updates to Dalim Drive, talking about Tom a little bit. So some of you don't really know what Dalim Drive is. So Dalim Drive is basically the first step Dalim took towards making the product into microservices. So they took the code out of some of the tools of Twist and made those available directly. So without the Twist engine behind it, without a lot of stuff behind it, and created an incredibly fast processing engine. We're talking about millions and millions of files a day being able to be processed through a system. And it was developed in 2019. Basically, just used it was strictly pre-flight normalization, file in, file out. That's it. It was expanded in 2022, added color accurate thumbnails, resizing, and dealing with margins on files. In 2023, they did more of an AWS integration with it, where before, basically, you'd have to have JDF communication, you'd have to have some code that actually submitted files to S3. Well, they work with Lambda triggers, so now you could drop files in an S3 bucket that's being watched by Lambda. Lambda sees it and fires off the drive. So just kind of improve that process. In the past few months, they've added JSON pre-flight reports. They've added rotation, separation mapping, ability to embed PDF annotations as text, parallel page processing, and a pre-flight only version of it. So current limitations with the product are developments required. Any change you want, basically Tom, and the development team at Dalim have to work on it. Just put him at the bottom. It keeps Tom busy. He does like that part of it. Right? He made that clear during his presentation. But customization is required for anything that needs to be done in it. And it's a very limited tool set. Not all tools inside of Twist can be created in Drive as it stands today. So the future is going to be Drive and Fusion. So it's going to be do it yourself. Basically, you create a workflow and you publish it out, and can create a Drive type workflow. It's all microservice based. Since 𝐂𝐻𝐿 is microservice based, you're basically creating Drive workflows in it. So you can have all the complexities, all the tools that you want to use, and you can create that out there. So, the customers where Drive was a specific product, it's going to be part of 𝐂𝐻𝐿, and you'll be able to create those workflows. One thing I should mention, the Drive as it exists even today, there's no limitation on the scaling of it. You could stand up as many Drive processing engines, the engines itself. You could stand up as many as you want and process more and more files. Dalim charge per page. So that was their way to not have to artificially slow customers down when they need to get a lot of files out. And so all the tools are available, and you'll be using GraphQL and TwistQL for the coding of it. So this is just an example. So before, you had to have code that looked like the left to actually send files to Drive. And now it's going to be just a simple GraphQL query like they have on the right. So you can have improved settings management. So goodbye Twist Editor. Today in Drive, you actually have to go into Drive Editor, create your parameters for a tool, save those out, grab them, run them through a conversion utility that kind of creates a package of them inside of Drive for Drive to access. It's going to obviously improve process monitoring. Even speed improvements have been shown. So part of that because of the multi-page PDF processing, and the example that I'm showing there on the right, where you see for pre-flight normalization, file processing is cut almost in half, and is almost just as fast as normalization. It's because in 𝐂𝐻𝐿 or Fusion, there's no PS check and then OPDF. It's all a normalizer. It's all one tool. It does it all at one shot. Where in Drive currently, it actually has to access those profiles and grab those. So for these 762 nasty files, as Tom put, it had to do that 762 files times. That's not needed anymore. So greatly improving the speed of it. And the example I'm showing there is just with one basic server. There's no load balancing, no extra servers. It's just one server to show that raw time. In Horizon, you'll be able to scale it using Kubernetes. So as you need, if you need to grow it and you got 10 million files you're hitting the server with, you'll be able to expand depending on your rules. Grab all those servers, all run all the processes, and then scale back when it's not needed anymore. So you're saving resources in AWS, you're getting your files within your limitations. So this just shows a kind of a screenshot of what process monitoring looked like in Drive currently. You're used to this if you're used to seeing ES, so it's very limited. Tough to know, clearing things, stuff like that, where this is going to be coming up. It's basically just what you're looking at the Horizon view, and you're able to administer your files or deal with your files as you're needed. So this was a very surprise one. It's one of my last topics as we come up in an hour. During last year's WWTM, there was a bit of concern in some of the people because, okay, Twist is going to be going away, Horizon's coming out. I have these years and years of development that's been done to these workflows, sometimes monolithic workflows that have a lot of logic, but are amazing at automated production. What is going to happen to those? And last year, the discussion was, you need to create them anew in Horizon. And the salespeople I was with were very happy because that meant a lot of professional services time for us, probably. But I was speaking to Christoph even last year, and I kind of noted maybe a glimmer in his eye. He definitely had some thoughts on it even back then. And he did a presentation where he discussed that a little bit. And using, as he calls his new buddy, ChatGPT, which led him astray sometimes, but found some interesting stuff for him. He talked about, and I'm going to go over this quickly. There's no way I could do justice to Christoph's presentation. It is something we could discuss because it's something they're looking at. It's something that's going to be discussed because there will be additional, services involved with doing this for customers, but it just gives us a better way to be able to do it. You'll know, Twist has so much inside of it, between all the different functions, links, tickle procedures, even today, it's tough to say finding people who know what tickle is sometimes with this the developers and stuff. But all of us that have worked in Twist all these years, we have our library of tickle procedures and different logic that we've used in the tool. How are you going to deal with that? How you deal with forks? How you deal with all these different issues and how the workflows work in Twist versus if you think of Horizon's more like an ES workflow. So you can't have zombie tools floating out. A zombie tool in ES starts a process. It doesn't have to have the logical links that you do inside of Twist. All that's got to be dealt with. And then you got workflows like this. Fortunately, but with Johnny, we always showed his workflow, Johnny Sutton's workflow. That this is an old version of it. He's actually simplified this a little bit by putting more logic inside of ES. But we have customers that have workflows like this, and there's so many decisions, decision trees inside of this, all of that, very hard to account for. So as Christoph Romer said, you deal with the information in Twist tables. That doesn't exist in an ES workflow. Forks, rendezvous, different tickle links, and or things, the zombie tools, the on-error tool behavior. All of that is completely different in Twist versus how ES workflows or Horizon workflows are going to work or do work. all of this logic was put into an XML file we call it DTW. Dalim is working on an actual converter to convert these. It does basic tool emulation. It even emulates the kind of GUI of some of the tools, because obviously converging some tools, the problems they have are some tools don't even exist in Horizon. We had, 10 different image conversion tools inside of Twist. There's one image conversion tool inside. It's all been incorporated in one tool. All of that thought has got to be put into how they're converting this. And apparently they were able to succeed. Christoph actually went through some basic workflows, but he went through several different examples of issues with forking, linking, and all that he just converted, brought into Horizon. It actually, in the converter, showed him some issues he needs to look at in the tool, like zombie tools, things like that. It dealt with some of them automatically, but it was very, very impressive. As you can see, this kind of the GUI that it shows on the right. So you see it's just a tar.bz.2. If you've ever exported a Twist workflow, you're familiar with that. And it shows this workflow had 7 tools, 5 links, and there's some information on it. We actually at the end got him to run Johnny's workflow through and saw it had 601 tools, 771 links. You'll see there's actually a tab on the right, kind of hidden there, but it's on the right that shows all the procedures that are used in it that need to be converted, and the conversion tool converted them. And the left kind of showing you a diagram of the workflow itself, just to show you this is the actual workflow that was converted. And it came up with this. And one thing I forgot to grab is a screenshot, because of these kind of forks and everything that we built into a workflow and how different that is in ES, this actually wound up being, I think, an OR work. Like it actually put the right tool in place, changed it, and changed the logic of the workflow to make it link up right. Obviously, this thing connects to databases and a bunch of different things that there's no way he could have tested a file through this. But theoretically, if this was more of a straightforward workflow, exterior connection, this would have run, maybe required some troubleshooting, but just a fantastic thing to be able to see that they're actually working on that. So that's it. Let's go over some questions. Guys, if y'all can help me with that, let's see, I can see a couple of them. So CI Hub does work with Okta. We've gone through testing, Cognito, was it Keycloak we tested? Yeah, so all those that you mentioned in your questions, it is supported. So good question on support for Amazon Linux. So currently, Dalim does support Amazon Linux 2, which has been end of life. They do not support Amazon Linux 3 yet because Amazon Linux 3 omits a lot of GUI functions that are needed. Now, Dalim is working on installers and other things that are going to eliminate the need for the GUI part of it, but how that affects Amazon Linux 3, we're not sure. Right now, we're recommending Jude 9 as kind of go-to for that, or whatever. If you pay for Red Hat, you can also use Red Hat. Anything else on the OS side, G, that we should talk about? If you're on here.
Yep, but no.
What's that?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, good. Yeah, if you're interested in Blanchard Connect, if you have something to work with, yeah, reach out to us at tech@blanchard.com. We'll be happy to set up a demo or anything like that with you, kind of discuss it, discuss your needs. We're always looking for improvements or additional connectors to add to it. There's a question about CC Connector, and I thought I covered it, but CC Connector current version does support SSO. So that should not be a problem as long as you're in the latest. You have to be in the latest version of ES, which I think the latest is 20. was it 2024 48.1 is the current official, I believe. So as long as you're on that version, but yeah, it updates what the plugin needs and it should support the SSO. If you have issues with that, just reach out to us. I think that's all the questions. So again, thank you for attending, everybody. You'll get an invitation soon. Hope we're targeting March for our next webinar. I think Alex has several things queued up that he'll want to cover. So we're going to be discussing that. If you have ideas for a webinar, something you'd like to see us cover, please reach out to us. We're always open to that. We know that some of the webinars we have out there are a bit dated now, or use like old versions of the interface, and maybe if you want to see those updated, we could do things like that. Alex has a task I think he took on, if I remember right. He's going to try to clean up our YouTube channel a little bit, and where we have a lot of generically named webinars that don't necessarily explain what they are. He's going to kind of clean that up and give them good descriptions and put the time coding he's been doing over the past couple of years into even the older files. I think we have webinars that go back to 2016, if I remember right. So again, thanks everybody for attending. We look forward to talking to you next time. Hopefully you got a lot of it and got to see exactly how much effort Dalim is doing in the background. Just amazing work that they're doing. So again, thank you everybody. Y'all have a wonderful day.